Yes, it is. There's the well-known expression, laughing all the way to the bank, but now maybe the bank is not a bank anymore. There are a lot of heritage buildings that were original banks, and now they've been bought, whether the banks think there's a better place to set themselves up, and now these buildings have become a whole range of things, from cafes to boutiques to even private homes.
And they're often some of the most beautiful buildings in town, aren't they?
Yeah. I think at the time when they were being built, the architects really put in the hard yards.
So speaking of one, there's one in Pyrmont in Sydney, which is just beautiful.
Yes, there is. It's a gorgeous facade, and for those people who don't know Pyrmont, it's sort of right in the city centre, and it's surrounded by a lot of office spaces. And this one was actually the headquarters for Red Balloon, which is the company that Naomi Simpson of the Shark Tank fame started. So they've relocated, and this space is available for other creative types.
What might it be useful for?
I think considering that neighbourhood is Channel 10, Channel 7, there's a lot of TV and media types around there, it might be good for a creative startup.
Great. Chinchilla in Western Queensland, isn't that?
Yeah, it's I think about 300 kilometres west of Brisbane, and it's not famous for chinchillas, it's actually famous for melons, of all things. But this bank, it's gorgeous. It's actually been converted into a 6-bedroom home, and it's got a gorgeous little fairy tale garden around it, and it's actually only $550,000, which I say only, maybe some Queenslanders might think that's a reasonable price, but for Sydney-siders, you barely get a studio apartment for that.
Yeah, and such a unique place to live.
Yeah.
In Sale, in Victoria, there's
one for sale in Sale. Yes. That one is for $1.19 million, so that's a sturdy price. It was built in the 1930s, and at the time it had the big city architects in, and it was really considered the finest building in Sale for a long time.
And what is it doing now?
I think it's had a range of different purposes, cafes, boutiques, that sort of thing, so that may well be its future if someone doesn't turn it into their own fancy pad.
Wow. Narromine?
Narromine.
That's Western New South Wales,
yes, it is near Dubbo, 40 kilometres from Dubbo. That's a beautiful 1930s period building. That's had a range of lives as well. It has now got a liquor licence, so we could find a cute little pub, maybe country pub that was once a bank.
And is it currently operating with that liquor licence, or that's something they've obtained to sell it?
There is a DA, so I'm not aware whether they've been operating as a pub or a bar yet, but the new owners can certainly start one up.
And in Parramatta, there's also one. Now, this has already got a lease with the bank, is that right?
Yeah, the one in Parramatta. It's a huge one right in the centre of Parramatta, which is considered Sydney's number 2 CBD. It doesn't have a price on it, because it probably will have a very significant sale when it does go ahead, but it's actually got a more than 10-year lease with Westpac, who has always been there and are planning to stay, obviously, and that's bringing in over $600,000 a year from Westpac renting it. So whoever buys that one will have a nice paycheck.
Probably not a private owner then, probably a...
Yeah, probably not one for converting into your own home, that one, but certainly a significant investment.
And why are all these banks on the market?
I think maybe a lot of the institutions have decided to maybe get out of the very expensive inner city locations. Perhaps they want to be in buildings that are a bit more tech savvy. Some of these buildings are very old, and maybe it's very hard to kind of operate as a modern bank in an old school building.
And a lot of those country towns, they can't sustain whole bank buildings anymore.
Some of them have lost their banks. There's been a lot of post offices, old school buildings, banks. It's sad to see them go for their original use, but thankfully there are a lot of heritage orders in place. So we may lose the original purpose of those buildings, but they will they stay around.
Yeah, stay definitely as landmarks in those towns.
Yeah, and a lot of them even have the signage of original banks that don't even exist anymore, like the Bank of New South Wales or a number of other banking societies. So,
yeah, and they've got great little features like vaults and interesting little rooms.
Yeah, and someone who loves soaring high ceilings for big artworks, that sort of thing, they definitely have great spaces.
I'm sure they'll all be loved in their new functions. Thanks so much, Kirsten.
Not a problem. Thank you for having me.